Introduce a fellow survivor, Sidney Zoltak. Sidney married, has one son and three wonderful grandchildren. I think one of them is here. And one of them, I was with Sidney on the March of the Living just last year. And it was a very moving experience. It was the first time that Sidney went on the March of the Living and made a very great impression as not only as a storyteller, but with his musical talent and his wonderful voice. I got to know Sidney about 7 years ago when we became co-presidents of the Canadian Jewish Holocaust Survivors and Descendants. Sidney is not a newcomer to Holocaust studies and commemoration. He spent some 20 years doing commemoration and education, and I'm very happy to say that he's excellent at it. And ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, I would like to introduce to you Sidney Zoltak.
Thank you very much, Nate, for that flattering introduction. And as Nate told you, Nate was a co-president of mine for a number of years. And when he decided to leave, he did not retire, but he continued his activities in the organization of the Canadian Jewish Holocaust Survivors and Descendants, and he's very active in the annual March of the Living trip. But before I begin to read for you a passage from my memoir, I would like to welcome everyone who came here to the Guernica celebration. I particularly want to express my gratitude to my friends who came here because of my book launch. You honor me with your presence. Also, I naturally want to thank Connie McParlin, who found my raw manuscript worthy enough and agreed to publish it. You created a very impressive book. Grazie. What I am about to read takes place in the ghetto of my hometown of Siemiatyce in eastern Poland. On Sunday, November 1st, 1942, there were unusual activities outside the ghetto, in both the town and the countryside. There was also a remark made by a German Schutzpolizei to Hatzko Rosenzweig, the son of the Judenrat president who worked in the police station. What he said was, tomorrow we will begin to move you, transfer you. A German official told Mr. Rosenzweig also that the Jews of Bielsk-Podlask, a town 50 kilometers to the east, were to be transported beginning November the 2nd. There were also reports that Germans had asked farmers to prepare their horses and buggies for work, and that some German soldiers and other young men were seen arriving in our town on motorcycles. That was exactly how my mother's cousin described what happened in the city of Sterdin. The atmosphere in the ghetto grew tense. Reports spread quickly and people began to huddle in small groups to discuss situations and look for a glimmer of hope. Naturally, children were excluded from these discussions, but I remember vividly how on that Sunday I met a number of my friends and some old classmates on a side street outside of our houses We were worried about something that we did not fully understand. We were concerned because we saw a drastic change in our parents' behavior. We saw their gloomy and worried faces, heard their hushed whispers. They knew that the end was near, and as children of 11 and 12, we could feel it. Within 1 week, all my friends were sent away to the death camp of Treblinka, only 70 kilometers from my town. I never saw them again. That scene of all of us together has remained imprinted in my memory. I see their faces. I see their eyes, but I cannot remember their names. Following in the evening of November 1st, everyone in the house was anxious and agitated. They had decided not to go to sleep, to stay awake playing cards. Because of the 7 o'clock curfew, the lights were dimmed and the windows covered. The children were told to go to sleep with their clothes on, and I was wearing a tailored suit with riding breeches that my father had made for cold weather. Around 1 a.m., a Jewish ghetto policeman came running to our house to tell Mr. Rosenzweig that the German commandant wanted to see the president in his office at once. After the meeting, Mr. Rosenzweig returned to our house and reported the commandant has ordered him to have the members of the Judenrat and all the Jewish policemen report immediately to the ghetto gates. You realize that this was proof of the roundup, the beginning of the liquidation of our ghetto. Mr. Rosenzweig told us and that he was not going back to the commandant and suggested that we all try to save ourselves. He also asked some of the Jewish policemen who were with him to knock on the doors of the neighbors and tell them what was happening. The people in our house had been waiting the signal. In the middle of the night, I was awoken and told by my parents to leave the house and head towards the barbed wire fence not more than 200 feet away. My father, whose job in the ghetto was to inspect and repair the fence, took out the cutters, wire cutters, and began to open a number of holes in it. He pushed me through and followed. My mother was to follow him. It was 2 o'clock, not on a pitch-black night. Somehow, my mother did not follow when my father and I began to run. Minutes later, we lost each other, but I continued running. All I heard were rapid footfalls of other people. I was 11 years old, all alone, and running without knowing where to go. I did, however, know what I was running from. I was running fast, so I was able to catch up with people who had set out before me. I suddenly found myself next to my Aunt Ruchel, who was carrying her 4-year-old daughter Hannele. She put it down, and we each grabbed one of Hannele's hands and began to run even faster. Our running was in no specific direction. Others were also confused, some even carrying on conversations with themselves. Suddenly we heard voices and the shooting started. It seemed that the Germans and the auxiliary SS guards had been dispatched to the perimeter of the fence and when they saw that many Jews were running, they opened fire. I heard bullets whiz by us. I saw flashes of light. I don't know for how long or how far we ran, but suddenly we came upon a forest and took shelter there. It was almost dawn. To my great surprise, I was greeted by my father. He had somehow reached the forest before me. After we embraced, kissed, crying, he told me that he had made sure that my mother had made it through the barbed wire fence. However, he didn't know in which direction she had run. We worried in silence. And my father, he must have been thinking about his lost wife and the whereabouts of his mother, brothers, and their families during the entire period of our wandering and hiding. I cannot remember once seeing him smile. Thank you.